Hello and welcome to this session on supporting autistic young people. This session aims to be a reflective space for you to consider some of your own beliefs about autism and the ways we work with autistic young people. The hope is that this session will enable a culture shift maybe, or a change in thinking about autism and working with autistic young people. So I'm Gemma Handover. I'm a senior wellbeing practitioner for the Calderdale mental health support team. We are part of Open Minds CAMHS. Here is just a brief overview of some of the services offered by Open Minds. So one-to-one specialist mental health interventions, advice and signposting to other services, resources for young people, parents, carers and professionals, access to South West Yorkshire Foundation Trust in terms of those young people that maybe need more help. We are a coordination point for neurodevelopmental support and assessments, and we have our mental health support team, or MHST, offer in schools. So brief slide here around a group agreement. You may wish to pause the recording here for a few moments to think about which of these are suitable for you and which you may need to add. What I would say is, if you need a break, please feel free to take a break and make the most of the time available. So the aims of today's session are to understand why it's so important that we support autistic young people, to consider how we respond to autistic young people, and to understand and have some ideas for applying the SPELL framework. So discussing mental health can be sensitive and upsetting, so please be mindful of your own experiences and your own emotions. There is coming up shortly a mention of suicide. Please take a break if you need to, and please speak to somebody if needed for support. Okay. So let's focus on the first part of today's session then. So why is it so important that we support autistic young people? So let's have a look at Caitlin's story. So Caitlin Scott Lee was 16 years old and had been dreading facing the headmistress's detention and had hyper-fixated on it. A punishment that she received after vodka and a tattoo kit were found in her locker before the Easter holiday. She was so distressed by the event that she decided to run away from a school trip, an act she later described in her diary as the best cry out for help I could give. The detention played on her mind throughout the holiday, and she requested for the detention to be upgraded to a suspension despite it being a more severe punishment. She wasn't listened to and she was not taken seriously. Caitlin was found dead in the grounds of her school on the 21st of April 2023, with the last diary entry being made of, "I hope this is my last diary entry. I want to kill myself tomorrow." We've got a quote here from a mum of an autistic child. So in year 6, my younger daughter, diagnosed with autism, was pleased to hear that there would be an Autism Awareness Week for school. At the end of the week, her friends refused to sit with her because they didn't want to catch the autism disease. And then we've got another quote here from a mum who couldn't understand why her child had stopped communicating, was instead barking. He thought that if he acted like a dog, then staff would like him because everyone likes dogs. So we know that 73% of autistic young people are in mainstream schools. Only 26% of autistic students report feeling happy at school, and 54% said that having teachers who don't understand them is the worst thing about school. 70% said that school would be better if their teachers understood autism, but only 14% of secondary school teachers have attended more than half a day's training. School culture can often mean that sharing autistic identity is damaging rather than affirming. You can't be regulated if you don't feel safe. So our job really is to think about rewriting the narrative about autism and move towards neuroaffirming and neuro-inclusive settings and approaches. There's a couple of slides here around the use of restraint. So Ellis, a 12-year-old boy with sensory processing disorder, ADHD and autism, attended a special school in Essex and was restrained constantly for up to 5 hours at a time. Lucy, his mum, told the Independent that Ellis would come home from school covered in bruises all over his body as a result of being pinned down. Once home, he would hide in the garage because his experience had left him terrified. So evidence also shows us that autistic young people are more likely to be restrained or secluded. 81% of young people who experience restraint or seclusion are autistic. 77% of young people with disabilities had experienced restraint or seclusion, and 78% first experienced restraint under the age of 10. 90% report psychological harm and 48% report physical harm. This course does not endorse positive behaviour support following the national guidance from behaviour experts, as it's felt that that's too reductionist. It focuses on the behaviour and reduces people to a set of behaviours, and we really want to think about moving away from that. So the next part of the session really is about how we respond to autistic young people. We're going to use this case study of Laura. So Laura was excluded from a previous school for violent behaviour and has been at her current school for a month. She's recently been diagnosed with autism. She's polite, but appears distant and reserved. When she does speak, she speaks in a monotone. She comes across as a bit odd, has no friends, and spends a lot of time by herself. Laura seems to have an obsession with the time and has recently started leaving school without permission early, usually by 2 p.m. When this happens, Laura is brought back to school by parents, but she then becomes destructive, aggressive, and starts to go into a meltdown. Parents agree that she can also behave like this at home. Staff are concerned for Laura's own safety, as well as the safety of other children, staff, and her family. So what I'd like you to do now is to pause the recording for about 15 minutes and in groups have a look at that case study and consider the following points. What are your first impressions? What do you think might be happening? What are the questions you might ask? And also, what might be your support plan for Laura? Okay, welcome back. Hope you found that discussion useful. So what we then found out about Laura is that she describes herself as having 4 different batteries, one for work, communication, senses and people. Her work battery never runs out. She likes working and can work all day. Her communication battery runs down faster, and her senses battery and people battery usually run out by about 2 p.m. Laura is aware that this means she will find it difficult to regulate herself after 2 p.m. and may have a meltdown. So to avoid this, she watches the time and has begun leaving school early before this happens. Having this piece of information actually changed the teacher's view and understanding of Laura, and it meant that they were able to support her, including giving her permission to leave school early at 2 p.m. So it can be really helpful to think about those batteries and the idea of energy accounting. And another way to describe this is around spoon theory. The spoon theory helps us to share with other people really about what life can be like when we're struggling with those batteries, and it can be really helpfully applied to the autistic experience. So what we want to think about is that imagine in any one day Laura has 12 spoons. She has 12 spoons of energy. So tasks and demands during the day use up the available spoons that she has. So getting dressed for school maybe takes 2 spoons. Brushing her teeth may take another spoon. The bus journey to school, people, noise, smells, textures of fabric, that's another 2 spoons. She's then got to move around the busy corridors at school. It can be quite overwhelming, so that's another spoon. Her first lesson of the day is tech. That involves lots of use of our executive functioning, planning, problem solving, communicating. So that's another 2 spoons for Laura. Her next lesson happens to be music. So the instruments are out. There's lots of high-pitched noises and generally escalating noise levels. And let's say that's going to use another 2 spoons for Laura. So she's now down to just 2 spoons, and actually they may be the 2 spoons that it takes her to go down the busy corridor to the busy canteen to get a snack at break time. But let's just say she's now got 2 spoons left for the remainder of her day. So these have got to last her the rest of the school day. Lunchtime, she's then got to maybe do some homework or some revision at home, and there may well be chores and other expectations that she has at home of tasks that she needs to complete. And actually on days where all of Laura's spoons have been used, she won't have enough energy to do the things that she likes to do, and this is quite likely to result in her being sad, getting angry, having nothing left to give, and finding it hard to do anything. And we can see it in the resulting shutdowns, meltdowns, or sensory overloads. It could also impact on her future energy levels as well. So it may be that she's ended that day with no spoons, and perhaps she's not slept very well. So maybe the next day she is starting with 8 spoons instead of 12. So this is reducing the amount of energy that she's got and increases the risk of those stress-induced meltdowns and dysregulation happening the next day. So it can be really beneficial throughout the day to make time for sensory breaks, downtime, quiet space, taking part in interests, because that can help to replenish energy. So I'm going to ask you to pause the recording again now and to take maybe up to 10 minutes of discussing in pairs or small groups the activities and tasks you do that you find more difficult and that use up more of your spoons, which tasks take up less spoons for you, and focusing on those self-care activities. So what are the things that you like to do that you know can replenish your spoons, give you that sense of having some energy back? Okay, hopefully you found that discussion useful as well. So we're just going to briefly move on to have a look at the results of mindfulness intervention that was completed with school staff, and that students also calmed down and it was noticed that behaviour improved. So this is about that self-care for you as the staff, and how practicing self-care and making the switch to system 2 thinking helps ourselves and also our pupils. So a bit of information about system 1 and system 2 thinking. It describes 2 different modes of cognitive processing. So system 1 is fast, automatic and intuitive, operating with little to no effort. It allows us to make quick decisions and judgments based on perhaps on patterns and experiences. System 2 is slow, deliberate, conscious, and requires intentional effort. So it's the type of thinking that's used more for complex problem solving and analytical tasks where more thought and consideration are necessary. So let's put that into a daily life context for you. So when commuting to work, you always know which route to take without having to consciously think about it. You automatically walk to the train station, you habitually get off at the same stop and walk to your office while your mind wanders. It's effortless. But today, the main route you take is closed, trains are cancelled, and while your route to the station was quite intuitive, you now find yourself spending time analysing alternative routes to think about maybe which is the quickest one, are the buses running, what's the weather like outside, is it suitable for me to walk, how much does a taxi cost? So our responses to these two scenarios demonstrate the differences in our instantaneous system 1 thinking and our slower, more deliberate system 2 thinking. But we do need to be mindful that even when we think we're being rational in our decisions, our system 1 beliefs and biases still drive many of our choices. So understanding how those two systems interplay with each other in our daily lives can help us to become more aware of that bias in our decisions and how to avoid it. So we're going to spend the final part of the session looking at the spell framework and what we can do to make use of this in our settings. So what is the spell framework? So it stands for structure, positive approaches, empathy, low arousal and links, and it was developed by the National Autistic Society in 1964 by a group of parents including Dr. Lorna Wing. The framework makes some key assumptions. So it recognises that autism is variable and broad. It's not about fixing autism, it's inclusive. It acknowledges that autism can be a barrier. We have a responsibility to reduce the barriers, and it values acceptance, listening and connection. And there are 5 guiding principles that are that run throughout the spell framework. So we'll look at these very briefly in order. So principle of being individual, so is the acknowledgement and recognition that everyone is different. Strategies and support are specific to individuals. The principle of hopefulness is having a positive emphasis which focuses on strengths and not deficits. The third principle of being honest works on the basis of effective open relationships and communications, ensuring that the voice of autistic people is heard. Principle 4 is respectful. So approaches used should take account of the rights of people and should respect difference. Any support offered is done so sensitively. The spell framework takes account of the need to go at a pace that suits the individual. And the final principle is ethical. So approaches are based on the principles of being least restrictive and having equality of opportunity. They're non-aversive. Positive approaches and practices are promoted. The principle of it does no harm, so any intervention or approach must always recognise the importance of safeguarding and ensure people are safe. Practice which could be viewed as restrictive is challenged, as human rights are at the heart of practice, and that strategies aid inclusion in the wider community. So we're going to take each of the parts of the framework and just have a look at what they mean and maybe focusing on some take-home points. So we'll start with structure. So we all need structure in our lives. Without structure or clear expectations, we may become anxious, ineffective or exhausted. And what we know is that structure helps to prevent overwhelm, reduce anxiety, it gives choice and it provides purpose and meaning. So positive ways of using structure really are having visual timetables, sequencing events using now and next boards, having visual choices, having clear instructions, so whether they're kind of written and or visual somewhere, and warning of any potential difficulties or changes. So some take-home points that can be useful when you're thinking about structure are really that activities and sessions have a clear start and finish. Plans, instructions, timetables can be provided to give predictability. Structure supports those executive functioning skills of planning and organising. Structure can support people to feel in control, and when this happens, it can help people to feel safe. Structure can reduce stress. It should always include consultation with the autistic person. In an unfamiliar environment, providing structure for autistic young people is one of the simplest things you can do to help them manage their anxiety and to feel safe. So thinking about positive approaches, this is really about being sensitive and considerate when intervening to support the reduction of any negative associations related to the autistic person. Relationships are crucial, so a balanced, authentic relationship which is person-centred and recognises the importance of seeing the person first as opposed to their deficits is a real important starting block for having those positive approaches in place. The development of a positive relationship that is strengths-based will support a change in the narrative. Recognising strengths enables others to provide opportunities to enhance skills and interests. And positive approaches are about doing with, not doing to. It's important to remember that people do not need to be fixed, they need to be understood. Taking the time to get to know someone helps to develop this greater understanding and builds that trust. So how can this be used in practice? So having a positive can-do attitude and framing information to a person that enables them to believe in themselves to achieve. Being non-judgmental. Build authentic, meaningful relationships. Agree realistic, achievable goals. So it's about recognising the balance between expectation and opportunities that are reachable, but also creating opportunity for young people to kind of have that stretch and push themselves that a little bit further. Agree on holistic, all-inclusive plans and approaches, ensuring that it includes the person and gives consideration to their life and interests as a whole. Examine our own beliefs and views. Do we ever influence outcomes for people based on what we think? If we think back to that system 1 and system 2 thinking, how often do we think we know what is right for someone and do it our way based on our thinking, understanding and knowledge? Do we give due consideration to the impact that this has on consistency for the young person if every person that they're building relationships with has different ways of doing things and different views? So brief focus on empathy. So we all like to be respected and understood. Seeing other people's views is important. The world may be experienced as scary and overwhelming for autistic people. We can help by listening and trying to understand their experience. So there's a bit of a myth that autistic people don't have empathy. They do. The irony is that when other people frame autistic people as deficit or less than, it's the other people who are lacking in empathy. We need to put ourselves in the place of the other person to listen and to understand how they're experiencing the world. So some good good practice ideas really are around empathy being driven significantly by the things we can control as staff and as adults around autistic young people. We can be mindful to be an active listener, so that's a choice that we make. We choose whether we listen or not. We can listen, we can observe, we can be considerate. Just be mindful that autistic young people are individuals, so don't expect them to all be the same or have the same support needs. We don't need to recycle every strategy and use it in the same way with people and expect them to respond in the same way. We need to remember that importance of relationship-based practice and spend time getting to know people and what interests and motivates them. So let's have a little focus on low arousal and low arousal environments. So arousal activates our fight, flight, freeze response. Stress or sensory overload can cause over-arousal. This can lead to anxiety or meltdowns and shutdowns. We can reduce arousal by being calm and kind, providing structure and showing empathy. And being mindful that low arousal does not mean no arousal. So saying less can be more. When a young person is dysregulated, be emotionally present for them. Low arousal approaches were developed in the 1980s as an approach to managing crisis, and it involves being a reflective practitioner. We can often inadvertently trigger situations or make them worse. Avoid arguments. It's difficult to avoid responding, and often when in an argument we all like to win. The mantra is, when in doubt, shut your mouth. If you're not sure, walk out the door. But obviously we're aware and we need to be mindful that we still need to manage risk and ensure that that young person is safe. A big part of this is about us and not them. We need to be reflective and mindful when seeking to manage situations and behaviour. So some take-home points really around that low arousal principle are having environments that are calm and organised, being aware of sensory differences and taking them into account, having a balance in our style and approach in interactions, and recognising when a situation is becoming overwhelming and adjusting the plan or changing the approach. And the final part of the spell framework is links. So this is really focusing on that need to reduce isolation and build connections, building connections to the community. We all need to feel like we belong. We all like consistency, and we can become distressed when these things are lacking, ignored, or inconsistent. So key things that can be really helpful here are involving the families, other agencies, and really keeping on top of that effective communication, being consistent, and supporting an autistic young person's hobbies and interests as much as we can. So we've got a summary here of the spell framework and overview, and these are some key take-home points really. So the spell framework, it doesn't happen in isolation. It needs to be applied across all areas of the young person's life. So home, school. It's about balance. It does not try to fix the young person. It should aim at improving that quality of life. It should be person-centred. It should reduce stress and anxiety. We all need to be treated fairly. We all need structure in our lives, and we need to show empathy for each other and value lived experience. So what I'd like you to do now really is to just pause the recording again for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and in pairs have a think about one small positive change you could make in the way you respond to and support autistic young people. So you may be thinking about that in terms of a wider change, maybe something across the whole school that you could do, or it may be that you've got a particular child or young person in mind that you are thinking of. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. So that's brought the session to a close around what we can do to support autistic young people. The remaining slides really just take a look at further support. So I will go through them briefly, but please feel free to pause them and make notes of any additional details as you need to. So Open Minds Partnership includes different services in Calderdale which offer different kinds of support and cover different age ranges as well. So that includes Open Minds CAMHS, Time Out, Noah's Ark, the Brew Project and COOS. If you do have any young people that require any urgent mental health support, please access the appropriate service. So the crisis line is open to all professionals, parents and carers, from 8 AM to 8 PM, and from 8 PM to 8 PM that is then run by night owls. There are some slides following around neurodevelopmental referrals and some frequently asked questions around processes and the right to choose pathway. Diagram of the pathway for the over fives, just to let you know kind of what happens once we receive a referral or a request in. Some questions around the right to choose pathway that can be really helpful to be aware of and to be able to share with parents and carers. I would definitely recommend making contact with our neurodevelopmental right to choose navigator, Alex. Alex is extremely knowledgeable about the pathway and what's available in within Calderdale and for those people that maybe require some support while they're on the waiting list as well. Just bring your attention as well to our digital offer. We deliver Silver Cloud. It's a free intervention. It's got very short, if any, wait times at all, and it's suitable for early intervention for those experiencing mild to moderate anxiety and low mood. Programs offered do now include a parent carer program for supporting a child with autism, supporting a child with ADHD, and we also have a Living Well with ADHD program for the older teenagers. And there's a slide here as well with some information just on other useful links, local links that can be helpful to share with young people as well as parents and carers. Okay, and finally I'd just like to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this session. Hopefully it's been of some use to you and you can start to think about maybe making some changes that may be small but will make a big difference to the autistic young people that we work with. Thank you.